Alright, today's exercise we are going to learn the gradient tool, the text tool, and also how to create a border using a new layer. And we're also going to learn about duplicating layers as well. So let's go to File, New, Blank File, and let's go ahead and we can name this gradient test. And let's go ahead and change these to inches. Got to change them to inches first, and then you can do, let's just do a 5 by 5 canvas. Resolution can be 72. We're not printing this out. If we were, you'd probably switch the pixels per inch to about 300. And then background contents can be white, and color mode RGB is okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit open. And I want to first introduce gradients, but we don't want to make any permanent edits on our background layer, just since this is a test. Let's go ahead and create a copy layer of this background. So let's go to Layer, Duplicate Layer, and we'll name this Gradient Test, and hit OK. And then that places it right above. So we have a new layer that we can work on while not affecting the background layer. Another way of doing that is you can, to copy a layer, you can drag it to the new layer, and then that'll give you a copy layer as well. Either way, gradient test. Now, your gradient tool is right here. When you click on it, let's examine the formatting toolbar. You can change the opacity. The mode, I would start in normal, and then we have 5 different options, and then different color schemes. Okay. Now, let's say I choose a color scheme. If I'm on this one, the linear one, I can click and drag, and it'll fill up my screen. Okay. Now, Control Z will undo your last action, so that's good. It depends on the angle and how big of the line in terms of what it appears like. So the gradient is dependent on how you drag and where you drag this line. Right? So a small line is a small line. A big line, it's going to be a little bit bigger. Here's this one right here, which is the radial gradient. Right? This one, and the reflected. Yeah, reflected, and then the diamond one. Right? So gradients are, one use of gradients is to fill the background or a large area with a color scheme. Okay, if you change the mode to a different mode, you can start getting some pretty wild stuff. If you don't like if you don't like it for whatever reason, you can always go back to normal, and then when you place it, it'll just go back to normal. All right. One fan favorite is the difference mode, and you can get some pretty wild creations. And you can even go back and change. You can do like a line, and then if you change patterns as well. You're not just stuck to one gradient or the other. So go ahead and practice. Take about 5 minutes and practice with the gradients. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how to create a custom gradient. So I'm going to go back on mode and go back to normal. And if I go to edit, I can click on these. If I click on this yellow, then I can change the color to a different color. I can place my cursor in the upper right, or anywhere for that matter. Click OK. Now I've just changed that color. I can change that color. I can click on it, click color, say I want it black. Then I can click on this color, change it, right? And if I don't want one of these, I can just click and drag it off, right? If I want to add one, you just click right next to it, and you can add points as well, right? You can drag them as well, and you can change this too, okay? And then you can hit OK, and then you have your custom gradient, okay? Now, the next thing I wanted to show you guys is the text tool. So click on the text tool, And if you hold the text tool down, you'll see that there is vertical and horizontal, right? We're not going to deal with the mask tools today, but the horizontal and vertical type tool. If I click on the horizontal type tool, let's look at the formatting toolbar. I have the font. I have, you can italicize or bold it. There's the font size, and then there's the color right here. So if I know that I wanted like a red color, or say a purple slash pink, I can click OK, and then I can click wherever I want to start typing. Then you see the cursor, and then you can just start typing. Let's say I type in Tim. Okay, so a random name. I type in Tim, and you're like, well, I want to move it. Okay, well, you can click on the move tool, and you can move it wherever you like. You can also rotate it, and you can also skew it. The cool thing about the text tool, though, is that it creates a layer automatically. I didn't have to go and create a brand new layer. It creates a new layer automatically, and it labels it for you. Nice and easy. If you ever want to change the font or the size, to select this, you can double click over the T, and then it'll highlight your text, and you can go ahead and change the font or the font size as well, or even the color, right, if I wanted to change it to a different color. So go ahead and go ahead and use the text tool, and I want you to write your name somewhere on this canvas. Okay, now that you have your name, and it should be on the top layer of your layer palette. If it's not, right, if you can't see it, just drag it to the top for whatever reason. And let's go ahead and click on the text tool and go to the vertical tool. And I'm going to just write a random last name. So you're going to write I want you to write your last name using the vertical text tool. And you can see it adds another layer, another text layer. It renamed itself. If you want, use the move tool. You can move it around. And if you want to highlight it, double click on the T right here. And then you can change the color to a different color of your choice. Okay? So go ahead and do that. And then after you do that, one last thing I want to show you with the text tool is if you double click on and highlight your last name, if you click right here, warp text, look at what you can do with the warp text tool. If I choose a style, let's say I choose arc, I can use these sliders to manipulate and warp the text. You see how it's changing? And you can change the horizontal or the vertical distortion, which is really cool. And you can also, if you do the squeeze, right, you can squeeze it. A lot of different cool things in terms of manipulating text. And then I can click and double click on your first name, and I want you to warp that as well, just to get the practice. Let's say the fish, and use these sliders, and I don't care what style you choose, I just want you getting used to the warp text. Okay, so go ahead and spend a few minutes doing that. So what we've done up to this point is we duplicated a layer and applied a gradient to it. We created two text layers with first and last name. And the last thing that we're going to do today is we're going to create a border. Okay, and when creating a border, it is a destructive edit, at least the way we're going to do it. So we want to create a blank layer. Okay, now we did a copy layer by dragging it down here and making a copy layer. But the thing about this is it's not an empty layer. It's just a copy of this white layer that has a white background. We want a blank layer with nothing on it, not even a white. So what we're going to do is you're going to click right here, create new layer, or you can go to layer, new layer, either way. And I want you to rename it border. Click OK. And I want you to make sure that it's at the very top. So if it's not already at the top, drag it to the top. And now we have the border on top. So now We can turn the eyes off, and we're doing this just to show you that when you see the checkered board, it means that it's an empty or it's a blank layer. There's nothing in it. It's completely see-through. Okay. So what we're gonna do is go to your rectangle marquee tool, and I want you to select a giant square, and you can use your arrow keys. I'm using my arrow keys to kind of reposition it nice and centered. And then what we're going to do is, right now, if I colored it in, it would color the middle. What we want to do is we want to color the border. So using one of your selection tools, right-click, select inverse, and when you right-click, select inverse, now you can see that the border is selected. And you can go ahead and click on a color that you want, click OK, and you use the paint bucket and color in the border. If you don't want to do the paint bucket, you can also use a gradient as well. All right, and then Control D to deselect, turn the eyes back on. Right, and now you can see that we have a border, and you can always take the border on and off. It kind of blends in a little bit too much, so I'd probably change the color, but you get the point. So we have a border we created from a new layer, 2 text layers, and a gradient layer that we created from a duplicate copy. All right, so go ahead and get this, and then when you're done, save it as a PSD file, because when you save it as a PSD file, it preserves all your layers. Okay, so go ahead and get that finished up.